Russia should ask themselves, what are we doing here? Why are we supporting this murderous regime that is committing mass murder of its own population and using the most heinous weapons available?
We are hearing new word from the Trump administration today, including National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster on the Trump foreign policy doctrine, or lack thereof. Joining me now, Cornell Belcher, Democratic pollster and author of A Black Man in the White House, conservative commentator Kirsten Haglund, Steve Adubato, media and political analyst and author of Lessons in Leadership, and Michael Medved, nationally syndicated talk radio host. Thank you all for being here. Really looking forward to this panel. I'm going to go to you first, Michael, because you're at a disadvantage not being at the table with us. Have you been able to, just in observing the Trump administration over the last week, come to some understanding of what is their foreign policy doctrine? What is Trump's doctrine?
They don't have one yet. It's in formation. But I'm very, very encouraged because this is beginning to look more like a normal presidency. I mean, it's abnormal that they posed that big picture of President Trump reaching his decision, and it was in Mar-a-Lago. It wasn't in the Situation Room in the White House. But this generally, I mean, people who have talked for a long, long time about trying to move forward to try to resolve this horrible Syrian conflict, this all of a sudden is beginning to look serious. And also the word being that Steve Bannon in the White House was opposed to this very limited, even military strike, and that there may be a White House staff shakeup. That's very encouraging to a lot of people who would like to see a more mainstream, conservative Republican presidency.
Yeah, and Kirsten, you know, it is interesting because, you know, this week my Daily Beast column was essentially that, you know, basically Donald Trump became George W. Bush this week. He started to sound like Bush.
Yes,
his policies are looking more like Bush. And that is really causing a lot of consternation among the Bannonite wing, the Breitbart wing of the party. Are you hearing the same thing? Are people in the base of the party saying, wait a minute, this is George W. Bush?
Well, the base of the party that came out for him in full force, where they haven't for Republicans before, yes, because a lot of their view was, let's focus on America first, right? Let's get our own house in order before we do this. The Ann Coulters of the right, the people who have been on the alt-right and running all those websites and commentary, they feel completely betrayed. And then, of course, you see Senator John McCain this morning coming out, and, you know, him and Lindsey Graham, as well as Democrats, being very, very supportive of this. You know, this looks good for the establishment wing, the Reince Priebus wing of the Republican Party that has really been looking for this shift.
Well, good, unless, of course, you are concerned that we're going to wind up in a quagmire in the Middle East with another Ba'athist regime doing regime change. You evoked John McCain. Let's play him on Face the Nation earlier this morning with what I think is what people are worried about, whether you're a Democrat or whether you are this base of the Republican Party. Take a listen.
As I said again, taking this action I support and was important. But we've got to have a strategy and a plan to follow through. Just a one-time deal is not going to be productive, and saying we are only going after chemical weapons areas ignores the enormity of the problem.
So, Steve, you know, I think what a lot of people are concerned about is that part in the middle. Just a one-time deal is not going to be productive. You now have the neocons saying, great, it looks like we're going back to war.
So this is it. I mean, this is the question about Donald Trump. What is the leadership approach? What is the decision-making approach? Where do you stand this week, that week, when you're tweeting in 2013, stay out of Syria, we have no business in Syria, criticizing Obama, which is the easiest thing in the world? The problem I have with Donald Trump, the fear I have about President Donald Trump, is that he wakes up, looks at a picture as if those pictures of those children who were killed and everyone else who were gassed, killed, or whatever means that were used by Assad in Syria, as if that were not happening for years. He has no information, no intel, no insight, no emotional intelligence to acknowledge the fact that he doesn't have any grounding and doesn't even explain this change. My fear, bottom line, is that day to day, week to week, we don't know where we're going to be. That's scary.
Yeah, and you know, Cornell, one of the reasons that there is a sense of incoherence is that the people who supposedly speak for this president on foreign policy don't seem to agree with each other. I want to quickly play Nikki Haley, who has been on one side of things, and then I want to play Rex Tillerson. But this is Nikki Haley, ambassador to the UN, on Meet the Press earlier today.
You know, the interesting thing, Chuck, is when this chemical weapons murder happened to so many people, Russia's reaction was not, oh, how horrible, or how could they do this to innocent children, or how awful is that? Their initial reaction was, Assad didn't do it, the Syrian government didn't do it, Why were they that defensive that quick? The idea of the casualties came after. The first priority for them was to cover for Assad.
So that's very tough on Russia, and she has been the whole time. Tillerson has been a little bit more all over the place, and the two of them have often not been on the same page.
Actually, if you listen to Tillerson this morning, he almost sounds like John Kerry, right? And I think there is this pullback from wanting to get into nation building. There's a slippery slope in the nation building here. And I think beyond sort of the missiles today, I think, to your point, I think Senator Rand Paul has a point about we need to have this debate about the slippery slope of presidential power. We now have a president who can see a bad picture on television and decide, I'm going to launch $100 million worth of missiles, right? I think it's fair to say that the founders didn't have that in mind when they gave the deliberate body of Congress the power here. So I think there should be, you know, broadly speaking, for the Americans moving forward, there should be a debate in Congress about whether or not this is the sort of action that the president has the ultimate power to do.
Yeah.
But here's my reaction. I agree with just about everything you said, except I'm glad that Donald Trump does have some empathy. I'm glad that he does feel and he looks at those pictures and has a visceral reaction. My fear, and I'm repeating it again, is that we don't know what the heck he was looking at for 4 years before that.
Right.
He is so devoid of intellectual curiosity, again, emotional intelligence, that all of a sudden he acts like he came up with this. He just realized healthcare was complicated.
Right.
That's the problem.
And he was banning these same exact children from the United States.
Don't come in.
Refugees. Right. And Michael Medved, you know, one of the other concerns on the congressional side is that we see this knee-jerk partisan reaction when it's our guy in the White House. Congress doesn't seem that interested in weighing in on whether we go to war in Syria. They're willing to give Donald Trump a free hand whether he's on one side of the coin or the other. So since we don't have a check and balance mechanism in Congress, does it concern you that Donald Trump is so easily swayed by whatever's happening and whoever's whispering in his ear in the moment?
Look, everything does concern me about Donald Trump. He's president of the United States. But one thing that this latest episode should suggest is that the alleged bromance between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin is over. They're Splitsville. I mean, and I even have heard conspiracists on the left suggesting, oh, this is all a show to hide the fact that Putin and Trump are still hand in glove. But very, very clearly, there is further distance now in all elements of the Trump administration between the Russia of Vladimir Putin and the America of Donald Trump. Do I agree with everything that's been said here, that we need to find a way, we need a coherent policy, we need a Trump doctrine? We clearly do. But I believe that that's evolving, and certainly when you have people like General McMaster, who is outstanding, and people like General Mattis at the Pentagon, I think we will, in days ahead, have a much more clear articulation of what the administration means and plans to do.
And you know, Michael, to the point you just made, it is interesting because you've had sort of the Putinites, they seem to have been marginalized. Most of them were in the campaign side of Trump world. They're now out, right? They're now basically subject to being called by Congress. And the people left in seem to be the sort of more traditional Republicans. I want to let you listen to Rex Tillerson, friend of Vladimir Putin, Order of Friendship recipient, but this is how he sounds now talking about Putin and Assad.
President Putin has called what happened on Thursday a significant blow to the relationship with the United States.
Well, I guess I'm not too surprised that Russia might make that statement. I will tell you I'm disappointed because I think the real failure here has been Russia's failure to live up to its commitments under the chemical weapons agreements that were entered into in 2013. So the failure related to the recent strike and the recent terrible chemical weapons attack, in large measure, is a failure on Russia's part to achieve its commitment to the international community.
I want to quickly go around the table, starting with Kirsten, about what are the implications if suddenly, as to put it in Michael Medvedian terms, the bromance is over between the U.S. and Russia?
Well, and we don't know to what extent that is, but we're facing a potentially regional, if not global, conflict, right? The good thing about this is that multilaterally there has been support from our allies for this strike, and I think we should also remember that for the people on the ground, for the Syrians on the ground, there's a great New York Times article this morning about the sigh of cautious relief that has been breathed by these people who have, for years, wanted someone to take some leadership and respond to this, but they need a plan going forward. That is the bottom line, because if they just say this is a one and done, then Bashar al-Assad and Russia say, okay, that's a one and done. I guess we can go up to this line, and all we'll get is a strike that doesn't even really cripple our Air Force.
And that's what the reports are, though, that the planes are still taking off from that air base, and Assad is still attacking these people.
Right. We haven't solved the problem, right? We've got a commander-in-chief who's launched missiles, and there will be a rally effect around him, but we still have fundamentally solved the problem. We don't have, we either nation build or we pull back.
My final point, I sound like a broken record. I would like the president to be more disciplined, to stop the tweeting just because the mood moves him or he sees a picture, and he's more thoughtful, surrounds himself with people who are going to challenge him, get the intelligence, and come to a decision when you have the information. Don't react viscerally or talk out of whatever part of your body. That's what scares the hell out of me when it comes to President Trump.
Put down your phone. Medved, last word.
Yes, all of that is happening. The one thing that's most notable about this is the first genuinely bipartisan approval that President Trump has gotten for anything, even from Hillary Clinton, basically, who advocated before Trump authorized the strike, precisely that kind of maneuver. And I would suggest that President Trump is very glad right now that he didn't lock her up.
But, and you know, the thing that scares a lot of people, Michael Medved, is that the one thing that you can get Democrats and Republicans to agree on is a war. And that's something that a lot of Americans are quite uncomfortable with. Love this panel. We're going to have to reassemble you guys again. Cornel and Kirsten are sticking around. Thank you very much, Steve Adubato, my friend, and Michael Medved, also my friend. Thank you, guys. And up next, Louis C.K.'s No Holds Barred Saturday Night Live performance. Stay with us.